Salt Lake City, one of the most beautiful cities in America, enclosed by the circling arm of the Wasatch Range on the east with the great valley opening into the south and west. As an everlasting landmark stands the Mormon temple, which took 40 years to build. Capital of the state of Utah, situated on beautifully landscaped grounds. One of the many parks and play areas. More tourists are attracted to Utah each year. This is one of the more recent motels, and although situated just off of Main Street, the scenery is good here, too. Salt Lake is the only metropolitan city between Denver and the West Coast. It is an attraction historically for its beauty and its unique atmosphere. The Wasatch Mountains provide a beautiful backdrop. In summer, residents flock to the hidden canyons to enjoy the cool mountain air. The Great Salt Lake holds more attraction for out-of-staters than it does for Utahns. Visitors are curious to try a swim, but few natives are interested in the experience. Industrially, the city is metropolitan, busy, and completely representative. Transportation is one of the main industrial enterprises in the Intermountain region. Men who haul freight over the road play an important role in the transportation of goods to and from this area. This is your home terminal, a station which employs 300 persons. Line haul drivers constitute almost half of the employees who work for PIE in this district. Salt Lake City is situated as a hub in the movement of freight inbound and outbound in all directions. Schedules move north to Pocatello, south to Los Angeles, west to Oakland and San Francisco, and east to Denver, Kansas City, St. Louis, and Chicago. The driver on the first relay east out of Salt Lake pulls to Wamsutter, Wyoming, a run of 268 miles. The most important cog in moving a schedule is the man who sits behind the wheel. In order to be selected for this job, you have been required to meet a certain standard of physical and mental qualifications. Before each run, a trip record card is filled out showing the driver's name, date, equipment number, points of origin and destination, and time of departure. A sign-out sheet is maintained at every division point. It is also used to sign in. This is the last step in the paperwork before departure. For efficiency and harmony in the trucking business, coordination of all departments is necessary. Getting freight in the trailer, making it a payload, availability, servicing, and utilization of power, and matching schedules are only some of the essential elements which must be kept in tune for the successful movement of freight. All this has an important bearing on your job and your welfare. This morning, Jack Emery is due out on his regular schedule. He has finished the paperwork, signed out, and now gives his rig the usual once-over. In addition to what you see here, all lights, horn, windshield wiper, oil, fuel, and air pressure should be inspected. Your company has gone to great lengths to provide you with the best equipment on the road, and PIE is recognized as having the nation's best automotive maintenance program in the trucking industry. No matter who else may have inspected your truck, always give it the required check yourself before departure. And don't forget to try your brakes before you leave the yard. Your working conditions are dependent upon the performance of the truck you are driving. Your attitude and skill also greatly affect its performance. And remember, you will never be expected to take out a piece of equipment unless it is safe to operate. Think, drive safely, control smoke and noise, be courteous. Beyond these gates, you are PIE. The equipment is now in your hands, and you are responsible for its safe operation until you reach your destination. You are heading north and then east to Wamsutter, Wyoming. You will drive in populated areas and open spaces, through the canyon in Utah and across Wyoming prairies. The mark you make as a line driver has an important bearing on your own future. You, as a professional driver, and the company you represent will be in the eyes of the public throughout your entire trip. You are now on your way. Watch the spot where Capitol Boulevard intersects the highway from the right, almost parallel. All entering drivers do not stop. Opposing traffic is not required to stop. Some drivers have poor judgment whether to shoot across or wait, which during heavy traffic can get you into trouble. A good truck driver will nearly always be found in the outside lane. Coming up is Slim Olson's Corner, where you can meet traffic coming from 5 directions. Plus, and not among the least important, someone about to overtake you who may be going straight ahead. Cars coming from the underpass may cut in front of you, headed for that side road. And don't count on all cars coming from Bountiful to stop at that stop sign. Don't take anything for granted here. Here is the turnoff into Lagoon Park. Tourists get confused at this spot and may stop very unexpectedly right in front of you. Some of the local customers do that too. And this is where 91 and 189 separate. You are going straight ahead, so you should be in the outside lane. It's actually that simple. But do you know what happened once? One of our drivers was in the left lane attempting to pass a truck. Much to his surprise, the other driver angled left for the underpass. Yes, he was wrong too, but see that guardrail in the center of the picture? The front end of that Peterbilt looked very funny hung up on that guardrail. Farmington Junction ahead. You turn right on Highway 89. This turn can fool you. It's flat. There are several directions to watch at once, and you have to shift gears in the turn. Almost anything could happen here. Watch for a black car coming up. How do you like the turn he made? Approaching cars might make a sudden turn right in front of you. Keep your eyes on the side roads, especially the one on the right. Don't depend on a stop. And an unexpected car pulling away from the cafe can land right in your lap while you are busy dropping gears. Pulling Hill Field. No matter where you are, glance in that mirror as a regular habit. Some drivers are lax in this respect. Whenever anything is approaching, and even though it appears normal, always know what is going on behind you so that you can be ready for a defensive move if necessary. Alert drivers often stay out of trouble by anticipating what other drivers might do. You are out of the city now, where there is less traffic. Although you may let down a bit, you can never really relax, because the traffic that is there is faster and much less reliable. You are alone with more time to think, but never to the extent that you can afford not to have your mind on your driving. Driving is a full-time job, any time of the day or night. Yours is a job watched by the public and governed by many rules and regulations, the Interstate Commerce Commission, state laws, municipal ordinances, and company policies. The reputation of your company and your own personality and character are often reflected in your driving habits. You are approaching Hillfield Junction. Anytime there is a change and shift of government employees at Hill Field, you can expect a line of cars like this coming onto the highway. Note how far back the stop sign is set. Drivers creep out onto the highway so they can see southbound traffic. Sometimes an approaching car is suddenly forced over into the northbound lane. With that many people in any situation, you can always expect many varieties when it comes to judgment and driving. Weaver Bridge, like many others, is narrow. A truck and trailer coming off of Highway 30 will still be in his turn approaching this bridge. Even if you are alone, practice staying in your own lane. He stopped. The camera started late. You are now starting up the canyon, and the road is narrow. This is a good spot to get some basic training in precision driving, where your clearance is measured in inches. Here is your chance to judge the right side of your rig while staying off that center line. Those drivers who like to take their half of the road out of the middle have no place in this company. You are expected to not be that kind of a line driver. Ahead lies the gateway curve, which is more curve than it appears. Posted speed is 20. It is not unusual to meet tourists coming from the opposite direction. Fooled by this curve, they swing wide. This bend in the road is a beauty spot to visitors, but to you, it's just part of another day's work. Watch for falling rocks, particularly during the rainy season. Sometimes a car dodging a rock may dart into your lane. It looks good now, but covered with ice, it puts you on your toes. You are now in the vicinity of Peterson, Utah, 36 miles out. You will continue to have a narrow road until you reach that portion 30 miles ahead. Priest Curve, it's called, a blind one and a bad one. The car ahead of you may slow suddenly for the service station, or someone may have pulled onto the highway from the side road ahead. He is slow and you can't see him until you're almost on top of him. Taggart's Camp area. This curve suddenly follows about 3 miles of open country driving. An abrupt change of pace is required. Some drivers fail. There is evidence of a recent example. One day, a westbound tanker, for no apparent reason, went wide on this curve and caught a train. The wreck resulted in fire. Included in the loss and damage were negotiable bonds in the train's mail car. That driver's bad judgment cost over $2 million. In this stretch, you are back to precision driving. To keep your unit under control, you must never allow your speed to be matched by the full quota of centrifugal force. For if you do, and you have to give way toward the shoulder for a moment, you can never bring it back. Never use up that extra margin of safety on tight curves. You are heading into Devil's Slide Underpass. This is a rough spot. You better obey the signs and try to stretch your vision ahead. The underpass is narrow, with a blind curve immediately beyond, and during winter on ice, this thing can be treacherous. Bridges are troublesome. Whenever you can, time it so you don't have to meet anyone on the bridge. Many accidents have occurred entering or leaving a bridge. Here is Echo Junction. Keep an eye to the right and also watch westbound traffic. Some drivers get confused and make a last-second decision to head that way for Salt Lake and will turn right in front of you. You are now 63 miles out and another stretch of narrow road. This is a rock slide area, especially in wet weather. Several bad experiences have happened here, resulting in considerable damage. New roads will make your job easier, but drive with heads up during construction and temporary road conditions. "82 miles out, approaching Wasatch Hill. Topping Wasatch Hill. Soon you will be leaving the state of Utah. "90 miles from your home terminal, you enter the state of Wyoming. Don't be surprised if you run into snow in June. Evanston, your first town in Wyoming and the first right turn situation of this nature since you left Salt Lake. You know what to watch for on right turns. At this corner, westbound drivers who appear to be turning right sometimes go straight ahead. On ice, this spot can be very nasty. There is a road junction on your left. Don't forget it. In a moment, you will pull into the port of entry. All trucks are required to stop here and check in. PIE drivers enjoy a friendly relationship with the State Patrol here and in other states through which we operate. While you are at this stop, give your rig an inspection. This is a regular safety check stop. This act of courtesy creates more goodwill for men who drive trucks over the road than anything you can do. The volume of favorable comment it draws is immeasurable, and you never know who is back there. It may be someone who has bearing on the enactment of laws affecting the operation of trucks on the highway. Laws are influenced and formulated by people, and these people drive passenger cars on the highways. No matter who you are or what you do, the public will always have some kind of effect on the success and future of your job. I wish you could read the hundreds of wonderful comments received from people who appreciate the courtesy and help demonstrated by thoughtful truck drivers. One person wrote, "It will always be a pleasure to see your trucks on the road." Part of another letter said, "I have never been so favorably impressed by any group of people as much as I have by the courtesy of truck drivers on the road." Pulling Leroy Hill. You are required to be alert at all times, for in your hands lies the fate of this equipment and its cargo. Sheep can be most anywhere and are sometimes quite unpredictable. Entering old historic Fort Bridger. And in Wyoming, the wind doth blow. A certain amount of mental and physical strain is connected with an over-the-road driving job. You are expected to have the stamina that is necessary and to keep yourself physically and mentally fit to be alert at all times. This is Peru Hill, 177 miles from Salt Lake City. A short ways this side of Green River, the road is good, and the rock formation provides a welcome change of scenery. You are now entering Green River. Always reduce speed and noise going through any town. Green River is behind you, and it's 15 miles to Rock Springs. You are in Rock Springs now. Don't forget, whenever you turn, in addition to looking all directions ahead, watch that mirror so you don't get caught from behind. Another left turn. At times when traffic is heavy, this left turn can be a problem. Those going straight don't always wait till the trailer clears the intersection. And remember, some people don't like trucks going through their town. I'm sure you know what to do to keep them from becoming too unhappy. When meeting bunched-up cars, as this approaching truck driver is, watch particularly the second or third car which may suddenly attempt to pull out and will be coming at you in your lane. Crossing the top of Bitter Creek. You are heading into the last stretch of the trip. That segment of operation which you work ends at Wamsutter, Wyoming. When you pull into the yard, you have accounted for another link in the freight haul schedule eastward. It may be Denver, Kansas City, St. Louis, or Chicago, or possibly somewhere on the eastern seaboard. You have inspected your rig before taking off and also en route at designated safety check stops. And here you will make a final check to see that everything is in readiness for the driver who will pull the next lap. Teamwork among drivers reduces conflicts and makes for a smoother line haul operation. Here is the beginning of the return trip home. Your truck is in from the east, and although the inbound driver is supposed to have checked it, you give it a going over before taking off. Confidence in one another, in your supervisor, and in your equipment will help give you a feeling of security in your job. Your rest is very important, and at this division point it should be no problem, for there isn't much else to do. You're on your way, and barring any unforeseen events or conditions, you can pretty well estimate your time of arrival in Salt Lake. Once again, valuable equipment and cargo are in your hands. 67 miles out, in the east city limits of Rock Springs, and at a regular safety check stop. You are expected to check your equipment at all designated locations. Tires should be carefully inspected. If one gets hot enough to burn, you are in real trouble. You may also coffee up here or get something to eat if you wish. It's a good idea to take a break periodically. You are starting through Rock Springs now. Remember your driving conduct in towns. This is a tricky spot. The intersection is not at right angles, and you cross railroad tracks. On this run, you meet a cross-section of all types of people seated behind the wheels of all types of automobiles. They have been allowed the privilege by their respective states to operate these automobiles. Perhaps some should never have been given this privilege, but they are there and have been permitted to use the highway. To maintain an accident-free driving record, your first job is to know what you are doing and then outguess those you see on the road. Your best bet is to drive their cars too. You will find some half asleep or unaware of their speed, and on ice they'll come across the road for sure to get you. Here's another customary stop. You should get out of that truck occasionally and shake off the drowsiness that often overcomes a driver. It can happen to anyone. The stop over with, you take off again. You can't be too careful any time you pull onto the highway. Be sure the road is clear before you pull out, because too many people lack judgment in timing and distance. Some of our drivers have run into trouble, not here, but elsewhere around the system. And this is near Church Butte's Junction. Out of Fort Bridger comes another eastbound schedule. It's always reassuring to see them. Descending Leroy Hill. If you are doing all parts of your job as you know you should, it will have become a habit for you to come off this hill properly. If the weather were like this all the year around, driving wouldn't be much of a problem. No snow nor ice, no chains, no one spun out blocking the road. But no such luck, for winter does come around every year. Put ice underneath a fresh snowfall here or anywhere else, and you have to be on your muscle. Ahead is Kammerer Junction. The road intersects the highway from the right and in the middle of this curve, which makes this spot hazardous. A car may have just entered the highway before you could see it and is still slow when you get there, or approaching traffic may turn left without signaling. Think ahead as you approach this curve. You are now entering the town of Evanston from the east. Don't forget to keep an eye on that right mirror. And that goes for the left side, too. Be especially alert on turns. Entering the state of Utah. In the past decade, trucking has grown up. Safer equipment and better men behind the wheel have demonstrated that a stretch of road like this can be driven as safely as any other part of the highway. But the old-timers can well remember the days when it wasn't unusual for a truck driver to let a rig get away from him and run wild or lose one on a curve and have it roll down over the bank. Men who have been up and down this road day and night, year in and year out, know what I'm talking about. You must be prepared for every unforeseen maneuver to take place. Remember, your alertness and skill are not just dependent upon your ability to get out of an accident situation. Rather, it's the foresight to size up a potential accident situation in time to stay out of it. Much more is expected of you than average driving ability. Expert driving is an art and a profession, and you are expected to meet those requirements. Devil's Slide is on the left. It's an attraction for tourists. If any are ahead of you, watch for one to suddenly slow up or set it down right in front of you, because this is what he is looking for. And coming up is Devil's Slide Underpass. Guess it's here to stay because new road plans do not include its removal. Just another reminder, on ice, this thing is mean, going in either direction. Here is Priest Curve, which was pointed out eastbound. It's just as bad westbound. Cars turn left for that side road. The curve is blind, and remember, there's a service station here. You can't see what's going on till you are too close to do much about it. On the right, that steep road is a hazard. A car may come out of there any time. Here's Gateway Tavern Curve. Beautiful in summer, but often a driving problem in winter. And now you are... I wonder who that was. Here are those government employees again coming out of Hill Field. This time they pose a little different problem when you are westbound. You can't see as far back on that road as when you were driving east. You are uphill, but keep your eyes open for any who may ignore that stop sign. You are coming down the last stretch of Hill Field toward Farmington Junction. You've been using your brakes on and off from the top of the grade. Brakes are not as effective when they're hot, and you may have to make an emergency stop. Keep this in mind. Eastbound, you started up here in second over, and now the biggest portion of the last 5 miles was downgrade. Unlike most hills, this one gets steeper toward the end. You have a stop sign, and there's another good reason to stop. You are on the home stretch. We've talked about rules of this game, written and unwritten, and there's a good reason for each. On the right is a hospital. Keep noise down. And remember, those pulling out of here may be absorbed with thoughts of grief and suffering, and their minds will not be on driving. Here's the turn off of 2nd West and on to 5th South. You've just about got it made. This is the end of your run, and you are home. You have moved a shipment of freight further west, possibly for the Salt Lake area, but most likely destined for the West Coast. Always your goal is to add another 268 miles of accident-free driving to your record and to the fine company record that you have helped establish. Soon you will chalk up another trip. This hour may be any one of the 24, but it's a welcome hour. You have added one more trip to your paycheck and have marked up one more day toward your next safe driving award. Whenever you are on the road, you are charged with a major responsibility in transporting freight across the country and skillfully handling valuable automotive equipment. You have been assigned this duty because we believe in you and have confidence in your loyalty and ability to perform this function faithfully. No matter what happens, nor how annoyed you may become, never forget it's your obligation, your duty, and the creed of your profession to extend every courtesy of the road to all other users of the highway. This is your run, U.S. Highway 40, from Oakland, California to Reno, Nevada. Extending 3,000 miles across the continent, U.S. 40 starts on the streets of Atlantic City, New Jersey, and ends at 10th and Harrison in San Francisco. Drivers from every state in the Union be seen somewhere on this road. In the vicinity of the Bay Area and Sacramento, it's heavily used as an industrial thoroughfare. A $1 million business moves up and down this highway many times within a year, and thousands of men earn their livelihood transporting goods across the country. You are one of these men. You are a part of America's magnificent motor transportation system, and upon each one of you depends the movement and progress of the nation's business on wheels. Gradually, improvements are made as new construction is completed. This has an important bearing on transportation, for better roads make your job easier and safer. That segment of Highway 40 which you work ends at Reno. When you pull into the yard, you have accounted for the first leg of another freight haul on its way east. It may be Salt Lake City or Denver, Kansas City, St. Louis, or Chicago, or possibly somewhere on the eastern seaboard. You have inspected your rig before taking off, also en route at designated safety check stops. This important part of your duty must never be neglected. In addition to fueling up, a final check is made to see that everything is in readiness for the next driver who will pull the next lap. Teamwork among drivers reduces conflicts and makes for smoother operation. And cooperation between driving and maintenance personnel is a must in any truck operation. You as a driver can make a world of difference in the condition of equipment depending on how you check it and how you handle it. Another trip under your belt? You are about ready to sign in. Now, let's go back to the scene where your run begins. On the shores of the East Bay in Emeryville, California, is your home terminal where you take off for your trip. This morning, old High Gear Winterton is due out on his regular schedule. He has finished the paperwork, signed out, and now gives his rig the usual once-over. No matter who else may have inspected your truck, always give it the required check yourself before departure. And don't forget to try your brakes before you leave the yard. The equipment is now in your hands, and you are responsible for its safe operation until you reach your destination. You, as a professional driver, and the company you represent will be in the eyes of the public throughout your entire trip. Think, drive safely, control smoke and noise, be courteous. Beyond these gates, you are PIE. Soon on your way comes Carlson Street in Richmond. If you catch a red light, that slight grade beyond might keep you in second over, so you will tend to play it for the green light. Let's take a look at a diagram of this intersection. There are three-way signals in left turn lanes. When the light is green for you, it is red for opposing left turn traffic. The car to watch is the one coming up in this lane. He may be watching this light at the time it's green and be completely unaware of the proper left turn lane. So here's what can happen and has. He is here, and you are somewhere in here. He proceeds with his left turn. Result, point of impact here. The point is, your green light doesn't always give you the freedom you think you have. Someone can cross you up. A little further along is San Pablo Junction. It lies just ahead as you approach a curve to the left. It doesn't look like much, but it's a flat curve, so take it easy. Traffic is usually congested. In fact, any place in Richmond is seldom without a lot of traffic. The principal issue at this point is a probable squeeze play. If you are rounding the curve in the outside lane, guard against the tendency to snudge over the line on your left. Sufficiently reduced speed will eliminate such tendency. At the same time, be prepared for the vehicle at your left immediately in front to veer too far to the right and crowd you into the sidewalk. A truck once wound up with a store window in pieces all over his hood. Not one of ours, fortunately. If you should happen to be in the inside lane where you shouldn't be, play it the other way. See that you don't get pinched in, but don't crowd the right lane. Before leaving Richmond, here's one more spot that sometimes gives trouble. It's just beyond that 23rd Street signal light. You can't see around the curve, and you may have your mind on the light. Speed is 35.
But see that little side road? An occasional car comes out of there, sometimes more, and forces traffic to a sudden slowdown or even a stop. And you may not know it until you are right on top of it. Further up the road comes the town of Pinole. You drop down into it after rounding that curve up ahead. At the bottom of the hill is a certain traffic light of which many people are unaware. Note the yellow blinker. Here is the curve. And there is the town. Look out for an unexpected change of light because of a pedestrian control button. It can catch you off base. 35 miles per hour is enforced, but that is often too fast for traffic conditions. There have been some embarrassing experiences and some pretty close calls here. Things look quite normal now, but this is one place where you are smart to leave a safe stopping distance ahead of you. This is upgrade in a slight curve by the oil refinery. Watch for the pedestrian crosswalk. There may be a single pedestrian waiting to cross, and the driver ahead may be especially courteous and stop to give the pedestrian a chance. Here is Tormey Dip and the foot of Smokestack Hill. You head into a downgrade curve with a pedestrian crosswalk ahead and a school on the left. The speed limit is frequently violated, and there is a temptation for a truck driver to keep his foot in it for the upgrade immediately following. This spot can be dangerous and calls for everything under control. You would be wise to back off a little. You are now approaching the Carquinez Bridge, which starts off with a bad curve. It's posted for 25 miles per hour, which is just about on the button, because this curve is flat and sharper than it appears. Many wrecks and collisions have occurred here. Let's go back for a moment and take a look at this particular spot. Notice that an occasional car coming off the bridge keeps straight and may cut across your path for a turn into Crockett. All drivers don't signal, and some have poor judgment whether to shoot across or stop, which, during heavy traffic, causes many sudden stops behind. This goes for cars entering from that road also. Anything can happen. Look for the unexpected to happen. The bridge is 3 lanes, 1 lane allowed for northbound traffic. When traffic is heavy, remember, if someone gets in your way, you have no place to go. A short ways beyond Fairfield is the first regular safety check stop. There is room to get completely off the road. You should inspect your rig in accordance with instructions in your handbook at all designated safety check stops. Don't overlook wheel bearing temperature. Tires should be carefully checked, because if one gets hot enough to burn, you may be in real trouble. You can't be too careful any time you pull a truck onto a heavily traveled highway. Here is the Yolo Causeway. The lanes are narrow, and speed is reduced. Stay in that right lane, and remember, this thing sometimes gets icy in winter. Approaching Sacramento, this town is tricky. There are more accidents here than in some larger cities, and we have had more than our share. This place demands your best defensive driving. Here is the turn on to 5th Street. The center lane is your best bet, but watch the intersections. Then another left onto I Street and into the right-hand lane. But don't run over the winos. This is the designated truck route through Sacramento. There isn't too much room for the next right turn on the top of the bridge. Here's the turn. Right turns can sometimes be rough. You are heading into Jaboom Street and going around the north side of town. The right turn coming up is a tight one and could be dangerous if you don't take it easy. Kids may be playing anywhere along this road. Crossing 12th Street. There's a traffic light, but keep your eyes open. There is 16th Street, which carries a lot of traffic, and at times it's really loaded. Being one way brings that first lane plenty close to the blind corner. Often you will have to wait, but that's better than taking a chance of getting into a crack-up. Keep one eye on that left mirror, and after the completion of the turn, you have several blocks to work your way over to the right lane. Just before leaving Sacramento, there is one more point. Remember, you are leaving a one-way street and entering a two-way road. Stay wide to the right, and maybe you should look in your mirror for that last guy who thinks he has to crowd over to pass you. Well, Sacramento is behind you, and you have a good go here, but only for a few minutes. Shortly after you roll onto this freeway leading out through North Sacramento, it gives way to another three-lane stretch. This portion of highway calls for eyes on the road. There are cafes and auto courts, and sometimes cars pulling onto the road obscured by the trees. Sound advice is to stay out of that middle lane. You won't gain enough to notice the difference. A little further along, you come to Del Paso Park area. Be especially alert at night, for anything can happen around a dance hall, particularly among the Saturday night drunks. Wills Point looks peaceful now, but some nights are open season on pedestrians and unreliable drivers who have little respect for the highway, themselves, or anyone else. Beyond Del Paso Park comes Sylvan Corners. This is another spot where pedestrians are on the loose and kids might be anywhere. There are stores on the right and a school on the left. There is a road intersecting the highway at an angle from your right side, and it is not uncommon for that stop sign to be ignored. You are now entering Roseville. When going through this town, in fact any town, keep speed and noise at a minimum. The authorities here have complained about trucks, and once there appeared in the newspaper a very adverse story about the speed of trucks written by a judge who lives in Roseville. The speed is 25, and it is enforced. You better take it easy all through this area. Comes now the Auburn Freeway, the last stretch of freeway you will have until further highway improvements are made. I wouldn't advise trying to pick up too much time. Citations have been issued for speed on this freeway. Maybe that freeway will be extended someday, you hope, for it makes that part of your job a little easier. As the freeway ends, you must again adjust yourself to a two-lane road with its limitations. Invariably, There will be someone behind you ready to go around the first chance he gets. When necessary, always give way to allow enough clearance for others to get by you and back into the right lane. Watch the contour of the road as it bends to the right. It can throw you a little if you aren't expecting the sort of abrupt, flat turn that this one is. And there is the well-known Applegate underpass up ahead, but not well-known to tourists and some thoughtless drivers who may be coming at you on the other side. It's a rough one. The pass is narrow and you can't see the sharp curve on the other side until you are entering the underpass. You can expect an oncoming driver to misjudge his speed and swing wide over the line. When the road is wet, so much the worse. Back off before you get there and until you can see what you are getting into. Look where that truck is. What would have happened if one of these cars had met in the underpass with the truck you just saw over the center line? I'm sure you know who would get stuck for the damages. Let's move the camera around and take a look at the east side, which from a truck driver's point of view is even more treacherous. You have to start a little wide in order to straighten out and try to go through on your side of the road. Keep your eyes on this red Dodge. How do you like that for an overhaul job? Greyhound and Peterbilt just won't fit in this underpass at the same time. This happens to be Big Dick on his way home. He didn't know we were out on the road, and he did not see the camera. So his coming to a stop was not an act for the sake of this picture, but it does show you what you can expect when approaching this spot from the east side. Just ahead lies Sawmill Curve, respected by every good truck driver on this run, for it is treacherous. Many a truck driver lost his rig just around that first bend. Some never lived to tell the story. You can be caught off guard, for the road is narrow, it is not supered, and the turn is sharp. And look out for approaching vehicles to come at you on your side of the road. You are now on your way down Glen Alder Hill. It's downgrade for 1.5 miles. The road winds and has a few bad curves, this one in particular. Back off a little and play it safe. Here's the start up old, familiar, and often talked about 3 Mile. It was given its name 3 Mile Hill by truck drivers who will long remember many a startling experience both up and down this stretch of road. This act of courtesy creates more goodwill for men who drive trucks over the road than anything you can do. The volume of good comment is immeasurable, and you never know who is back there. It may be someone who has bearing on the enactment of laws affecting the operation of trucks on the highway. Laws are influenced and formulated by people, and these people drive passenger cars on the highways. No matter who you are or what you do, the public will always have some kind of an effect on the success and future of your job. I wish you could read the hundreds of wonderful comments received from people who appreciate the courtesy and help demonstrated by thoughtful truck drivers. One person wrote, "It will always be a pleasure to see your trucks on the road." And while this film is in process, another letter said, in part, "I have never been so favorably impressed by any group of people as much as I have by the courtesy of truck drivers on the road. Yes, yours is a job watched by the public and governed by many rules and regulations. the Interstate Commerce Commission, state laws, municipal ordinances, and company policies. The reputation of your company and your own personality and character are often reflected in your driving habits. You continue up and up. Almost anywhere along this stretch, you can expect an occasional oncoming car rounding a curve too fast to stay in its own lane, or another trying to get around you, with its driver finding himself quite out of position. You are required to be alert at all times, whether your equipment is a cab over or a conventional. Its fate and the cargo behind it are in your hands. Having worked up the gear range, you begin to roll again, but with eyes on the road and your mind on your driving. The two-lane road ahead continues, and that's what you have the rest of the trip. You will climb off and on, mostly on, till you reach Donner Summit. You meet a cross-section of all types of people seated behind the wheels of all types of automobiles. They have been allowed the privilege by their respective states to operate these automobiles. Perhaps some should never have been given this privilege. Keep your eyes open for them. Men who have been up and down this road day and night, year in and year out, know what I'm talking about. Be prepared for every conceivable maneuver to take place. Remember, your alertness and skill are not just dependent upon your ability to get out of an accident situation. Rather, it's the foresight and judgment in sizing up a potential accident situation in time to stay out of it. No matter what happens, nor how annoyed you may become, never forget it's your obligation, your duty, and the creed of your profession to have your unit under control at all times and to extend every courtesy of the road to all other users of the highway. You are in the Donner area now and approaching the pass. If the weather were like this all the year around, there would be nothing to it. No snow or ice, no chains, no ski hounds all over the road, with their parked cars and the nose pushed into the snowbank and the tail sticking halfway out onto the road. It would be great, wouldn't it? But no such haven, for winter does come around every year. Here is the pass, elevation 7,135 feet. Watch your approach to the bridge. It's a little rough if you meet someone on it, for you have to swing wide to avoid hitting the curb on the right and still handle that center line problem the best way that you can. Once you are on the bridge, there is no problem to stay in your own lane, but in winter these lanes aren't as wide as they presently appear. Having selected the proper gear, you are now headed down the eastern slope of the Sierra Nevada. You will drop 1,000 feet in 3 miles. Yes, the proper gear. That is the main protective measure of control down this hill. In the past decade, trucking has grown up. Safer equipment and better men behind the wheel have demonstrated that this stretch of road can be negotiated as safely as any other part of the highway. But the old-timers can well remember the days when it wasn't unusual for a truck driver to let a truck get away from him and run wild, or to lose one on a curve and have it roll down over the bank. Driving isn't much of a problem when the road appears as it does now. But add several feet of snow to this scene and put ice underneath, and you have to be on your muscle. Total snowfall during a year has added up to 30 feet. Sometimes it falls fast enough to close the road. Just the year before this picture was made, the road was blocked by heavy snow for 4 weeks. Approaching a bridge, especially coming out of a curve, presents a problem of timing if you want to avoid meeting an oncoming car at or on the bridge. Bridges are troublesome. Some motorists often misjudge space. Here is Hirschdale Corner, a spot you will always remember going in either direction, particularly in winter. There's just enough super on that curve into the bridge to give you a bad time on ice. If you meet approaching car or truck coming off the bridge, it's a close call just before you straighten out. You may have to stop to avoid a sideswipe, but it's worth it. You are charged with a major responsibility in transporting freight across the country and skillfully handling valuable automotive equipment. You have been assigned this duty because we believe in you and have confidence in your sincerity, loyalty, and ability to perform faithfully. A certain amount of physical and mental strain is a part of the job. You are expected to have the stamina that is necessary and to keep yourself physically and mentally fit to be alert at all times. Much more is expected of you than average driving ability. Expert driving is an art and a profession, and you are expected to meet those requirements. Reno ahead, the last leg, but you can't relax because there are intersections and unpredictable drivers who might be most anywhere, any hour of the night. Soon you will chalk up another trip. This hour may be any one of the 24, but it's a welcome hour. You have started a load of cargo on its way east. You have added one more trip to your paycheck, and you have marked up one more day toward your next safe driving award.